Breaker Band.
All right. I think everybody can hear me. Hello, this is Herschel McWilliams with LiveJazzKC.com. Welcome to another wonderful edition of Live Jazz KC's Convo Improvvo with our wonderful host, Rob Scheps, and our guest of honor today, the wonderful Adam Nussbaum. And we look forward to hearing everything you've got to say, all your stories and great things about your history and life. And if you're watching this, please understand we appreciate you tuning in as always. And you feel free to please donate anything you can through the livejazzkc.com or through Venmo, and I'll have all that information in the comments if you have any questions. Anyway, have a great day.
Now here we are. Adam, can you hear me okay?
All systems go, Rob. Good to see
Okay.
you.
Everybody, you too. Adam Nussbaum, I mean, we none of us see each other during this COVID shit. It's really kind of a drag. But Adam, to me, this is one of my favorite drummers, one of my favorite people, and one of the funniest and most thoughtful people in jazz, I think would be fair to say. And one of the craziest in his own sane way, right? Something like that. Well, Adam, what we just heard, of course, that's Michael Brecker's great quartet, 1990, with Jay Anderson on acoustic bass, Joey Calderazzo on piano and keyboards, and yourself on drums, and Michael actually playing Iwi. We didn't even get to him playing tenor. I believe the first time I ever heard you play live, Adam, before we became friends and knew each other in New York, was at the Berkeley Performance Center with that exact band with Mike Stern added. Does that sound possible?
It may have been with Jeff Andrews.
You're right. It may have been. And Jeff Andrews, for those who don't know, incredible electric bass player, kind of coming out of Jocko from Baltimore, and had a really kind of sad end a couple of years ago. And I played a session with him with his Baltimore homeboy, Kirk Driscoll, once on 18th Street. And I guess they went way back. They were like brothers. And I couldn't believe it. I have never heard an electric bass player sound more like Charlie Parker than Jeff Andrews.
Well, he and Mike Stern used to shed together all the time.
Okay.
So they were working on all different lines and
Yeah.
dealing with transcriptions and stuff like that. He was very committed to studying the history.
Sure. Well, I know that you have been too. So, I learned something. I always think of you as one of these cats from Connecticut who grew up in a certain generation where your neighbors, friends, bandmates were people like Chip Jackson, John Stoll, even John Abercrombie. And, the question is, who knew each other when? But can we start with this? You were actually born in New York City before you moved to Norwalk, right?
Correct. Yeah, when I was about 4 years old, my parents moved up to Norwalk from Washington Heights.
Okay, Washington Heights, for those out of town, is kind of Upper Manhattan.
It was
If you know the Broadway
687 West
Building.
204th Street, way up near the tip
Okay.
of Manhattan, not too far from the Bronx. The area is also known as Inwood.
Yeah, so you were above the George Washington Bridge. You were way
Oh,
up
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, and the thing for me, when I hear Norwalk as a jazz musician, the first thing I think of is Horace Silver because
Right.
he was born in Norwalk. And I actually just finished reading his autobiography, which is a really cool book. I don't know if you have seen it yet. Um, it's called Let's Get Down to the Nitty Gritty, of
Oh,
course.
okay. That's
And
nice.
yeah, and Horace talks at great length about kind of growing up poor but happy and playing a lot and learning everything in Norwalk. And he was actually a gigging tenor player in addition to piano, which I bet you knew,
Of
right?
course. I got a picture of him playing tenor.
So Horace was a little older than you. Is he
Oh,
someone who
much
was in?
older than me.
Was he in your sights at all when you were a child in Norwalk?
I mean, not because he was from Norwalk. I just got hip to him because of Song from My Father. And, he used to hear that tune in jukeboxes and stuff.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, someone said this to me the other day who was younger than you and me, and they said something like, about jazz never being popular, and I said something like, "Look, man, Take Five and the In Crowd, these were top 40 hits. They were right there next to the Beatles and Dusty Springfield. There was a time, right?"
Oh, yeah, man. Jukeboxes had a wide variety. I mean, you could get a 45 of, Blue Train and things like that, part one, part two. They used to mix things up. Ray
Amazing.
Charles, all kinds of stuff. Everything was being mixed up. There was a little bit more stuff coming together back then.
Well,
And
so
depending where the jukebox was located, it had different kinds of music in it.
in a black bar and a white bar and in a
Yeah, it was mixed up. And at old diners, they used to have those little, things on the table where you could put money in and play music.
where you would actually like kind of like switch the big fat pages of
That's
tunes.
right. That's right. And you'd
Yes,
pay
it was
like a quarter, you'd get three tunes for a quarter.
beautiful. And so it could be like, cheese omelet and Horace Silver.
Yeah, or the Beatles, or Tommy James and the Shondells, or Ray Charles, or
Sure.
Billie Holiday, or you name it. There was a big variety.
It almost seems like America, I mean, it's pretty messed up racially now, but it was so polarized racially in the early 60s and before, but the music seems to have been less segregated in a way. People listen to everything.
music has no color.
Sure. Unless you
So
got the thing, what's it called? Synesthesia, where like you see colors when you hear notes.
I
Maybe
don't know. I've always been an e-racist. Let's
erasist.
erase all the bull. You know, we're all God's children here.
Well, Adam, we all across the world, we all know you as a master drummer, and I'm afraid that's the first thing people think of when they don't know Adam Nussbaum. They think great drummer, but the question is, you played piano for 5 whole years before you ever really got with the drums. Is that right?
Yeah. Uh, Pardon me. I'm having a peanut. Ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-ba-ba-doo-boo-beep. I
Oh,
studied classical piano with a wonderful teacher who had been a student of Bartok.
wow, no
And
kidding.
her name was Catalin Stoppelfeld. She was great. And besides doing weekly piano lessons, 2, 3 times a month, she used to bring her students together and put little ensembles together. So we'd all be playing little Orff instruments and things like that. And I was always gravitating towards the drums.
Hmm.
And when I was 5, before I even started with piano, I had a cousin of mine, Peter Gaines. He was 9 years older. So I would occasionally stay with my aunt and uncle, and my cousin Peter had a drum set. So I watched him play, and it was basically monkey see, monkey do. Put on a stack of 45s. I watched him play.
Okay.
Then I just copied what he did, and I found that I could play time and kind of get something going on,
Well,
as
so
elementary as it was.
what's the chronology of starting on piano and then adding drums? Where does the bass and the alto saxophone, where do they fit into your development?
Well, the bass came in when I was in fourth and fifth grade.
Okay.
Because when you're in elementary school, they didn't have brass instruments, only string instruments.
Okay.
So I was into that and I loved the bass. And then when I got into seventh grade, which was the beginning of junior high school, at that point, I was all psyched, thinking, man, I'm going to go in and play drums.
Okay.
So when I went into the audition and I said, I'm here, I want to audition for drums, they said, oh, we have all the drummers we need. And I go, what do you mean? They said, well, there had been a summer preparatory program between elementary school and junior high, going from string instruments to band instruments. I didn't know about that. I was away at camp.
Sure. So you slept
So
on it without even realizing.
I had no idea. And so if it happened to me now, I would have said, I don't care, let me audition. But it was like, you're 11 years old. They tell you there's no vacancy for drums. So
Yeah.
I said, well, what am I going to play now? So I said, I'll play alto.
Like Mark Copeland. Start on the alto.
Mark Cohen.
Mark Cohen, I know, I remember. It was before my time, but there was that Chico Hamilton band with all of our
That's right.
friends in it, which was
And
basically, well, Mark Cohen on electric alto sax, which sometimes sounded like Jimi Hendrix more than a saxophone, John Abercrombie on guitar, whom we both love dearly, and Glenn Moore on bass. And I think they were all there together.
but there's a record that's out called Friends.
That's the record with Clint Houston that John played on, right?
And it's Clint, I think Jeff Williams,
Yes. And who's the fourth person? Cohen.
Abercrombie, and Mark Cohen.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other thing. Well, so okay, so now you're playing the alto. How far did you take it, Adam? Not two.
No. 1 year. That was it. My heart wasn't into it. I was so captivated by the drums.
Sure.
And so I wasn't involved at all in the school system playing in bands because I didn't get in.
Okay.
But I had a bunch of friends that I played with. A dear friend of mine I've known since I'm 7, a great piano player, Robert Aries.
Oh yeah, I know about him. I don't remember. Did he used to play with Schofield's band a long time
Oh,
ago?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's like one of my closest musical partners. We were in rock bands together. We
So
fell in love with
you were
jazz
dealing with
together.
the garage band route rather than a school orchestra route. Is that
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah,
Okay. And
absolutely.
what kind of music were you playing in these garage bands when you first started playing with other people?
Oh man, we were playing Jimi Hendrix, Cream, Zeppelin, Jeff Beck, a
Okay.
little bit of some Motown stuff, some Sam and Dave, Temptations. We were just listening to everything on the radio, man,
Sure.
and digging stuff. And we had a buddy, Brian McHale, played guitar. We just all would play together. Little did I know that Brian's guitar teacher at that time was John Schofield,
Okay.
because John was from the next town, Wilton,
All right.
Connecticut, which was all adjoining Norwalk, Westport, Wilton, Darien. They were all together.
So now I know there were a few other cats in there with you, but maybe you can straighten me and the listeners out on the chronology. So when and where in Connecticut are you in relation to Schofield, Abercrombie,
Way
um,
younger. I'm
Kip
the kid.
Jackson?
I'm the
You
kid.
you were younger than all those guys.
Absolutely. I mean, Sco is like 4 years older than me. Abercrombie, I think, was about 7 or 8 years older than me. Chip was about 2 or 3 years older than me.
So John grew up in he said the working part of Greenwich. He called it Chickahominy,
That's
and he
right.
said it was whatever it was, mixed neighborhood, Italian
Yeah.
and Irish and black and
Uh-huh.
everybody just hanging, but not the rich part of Greenwich. And
Yeah.
and you were in Norwalk and Schofield was in Wilton. Where was
Uh-huh.
Ron McClure? And he was much older, I guess.
Ron was 14 years older. He was from New Haven.
Okay, so that's not the same thing. That's not coastal Connecticut where you guys were.
No, that's
Okay,
further north.
but now Chip was only 2 or 3 years apart from you. Did you know Chip in high school?
Westport. I knew of him. I knew his brother. He had a brother, Bob, who played drums. I used to see him around. What was interesting for me is I'm playing with my friends, rock bands, and we're doing cover tunes and things like that. But my friend Robert was taking piano lessons with John Mehegan.
Oh, I've heard of him. Sure, it's a famous
And he
teacher.
was one of the first people to write a book about jazz improvisation.
Okay.
And so he was up there in Westport, and a lot of people took lessons with him. And I would go up to Robert's lessons with him, and Mehegan had a little drum set. And I
Mhm.
would play there sometimes, and he'd yell at me and give me a tuning, which was good.
Yeah, and by a tuning, I mean you got to explain to people what that slang is for you.
Well, you kind of like would pull my coat to some things. He kind of gave me some criticism and woke me up.
Was Mehegan considered kind of like a regional jazz guru the way Charlie Banacus was outside of Boston?
Probably, but not at that level.
Hmm. Okay.
But
But the point is, lots of cats would go to him. They would come from other
absolutely.
Connecticut towns. They would hear that he was the guy to study with, things like
He was a
this.
guy. Yeah, he was one of the people that demystified the concept of teaching jazz.
Okay.
He
Well,
was
Adam,
aware of the science, and he was aware of chord changes and things like that. And he basically wrote stuff out. And there was a few other people in my town that were inspiring to me. When Joe Corsello, the drummer, lived in Stamford, Connecticut. I used to hear him.
okay.
I used to hear a guitar player who was kind of a local guitar guru named Link Chamberlain.
Now he's the guy that John Stoll studied with, and John never talks about his growth without mentioning Link and talking about him.
Link was like the guitar guru in that area. A lot of people studied with him, and he used to be in a band that had Liebman in it called Sawbuck, which was like a horn, a horn band, that thing that was happening
You
late
mean like
60s.
Chicago and Ten
Blood,
Wheel
Sweat, and
Drive?
Tears, that same kind of thing, that
Yeah.
kind of vibe. There was quite a few bands at that time period. Out on the West Coast, before Tower of Power, you had Cold Blood. In New York, you had 10 Wheel Drive.
And Dreams.
And, well, Dreams was later.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well,
This
so
was
here's
all
the question.
pre-Dreams, yeah.
So did you become completely focused on being a drummer while in high school?
I just was playing, man. I had fun playing with people, and I just loved playing. I wasn't thinking about becoming anything. I just wanted
I,
to play with people, and I was loving it. And it was my little scene that I had with my little group of people, our little tribe. I wasn't one of the athletes in school. I
mhm.
wasn't one of the bad guys. I had my little scene with my people, and we had fun.
Well, but you must have been serious enough about your focus on it because you went to the music school at City College in New York City, right?
Well, that was after I tried a year at Emerson College.
Oh, I know Emerson because that's in Boston. And for all of us who went to school there, that's WERS. And that's a
Right.
school that
Right.
teaches broadcasting and radio skills and things. And so we were always going on ERS to play live or to play our, our little records or whatever it was.
Oh
So,
yeah. Um, what happened with me was at the time I grew up an hour from New York. I wanted to go away to school for my first year at college. And my thinking was let me go to an environment where I can have the do re mi around me, but let me go to school for the ABCs. I wasn't thinking about going to a music school. I
okay.
just wanted to go to a school and learn about things other than just music, but let me be in an environment
Uh-huh.
where music was present. Hence,
So
in Boston, Berkeley was there, and New
NEC,
England Conservatory was there.
not to mention whoever was at that tiny little Boston Conservatory, and then sometimes a good musician at MIT, always a couple of cats over
Yeah,
at
so
Harvard.
I figured let me be around the do re mi and go to school for the ABC.
Now,
But while
Can you clarify for anyone out there who's confused? What's the do re mi?
music,
Okay,
I
and the
wanted to go to
ABC is the
school.
basics of other things.
Yeah, just like basic general education.
Sure.
And
So
I
you when you went to Emerson, it was with no intention of being a music major, I guess.
no, I was figuring I can play on my own because I was learning everything by doing it with others. I mean, of course, I was studying and taking lessons, but I'd have to say that most of my knowledge and what I was acquiring was on the bandstand.
So are you more self-taught on the drums than you certainly were on piano, or did you have a couple teachers who were real influential?
I had a few teachers on the drums, but that was, from the time I was 5 till I was 13, I was playing on the drum pad. I'd set up pillows. I'd play with the radio. I'd play with records. I'd play all the time, but I didn't get drums till I was 13.
No
And it
kidding.
used to piss off my friends that were taking drum lessons and had drums because
Right.
I'd go over to their house and I was playing better than them. And I knew nothing about drum literature. I
Uh-huh.
didn't know about rudiments. I didn't know any of that. I was coming to the drums for music. I
But see,
didn't come to music from the instrument.
this is very interesting because our good buddy and our colleague Elliot Zygmunt, he said that the way that he came up in the Bronx was he started off with a snare drum and brushes for the first 2 years, no sticks and no drum kit. So the point is, you guys are both really fine drummers, but you both kind of started without a full kit when you were doing your thing to begin with,
I was just listening to everybody, man, and I was curious,
and you were absorbing.
big time. And I would get the books, I'd read liner notes, I'd get a record, I'd wear it out. I'd listen to one record all week long, 2 weeks, I'd listen to them nonstop. The
Well,
record for me that changed my life, that opened up the door, was "Are You Experienced" by Jimi Hendrix.
sure, that's a truly great record. And is that before you heard any jazz that really turned you on?
I'd heard of some jazz. My parents had a very diverse record collection.
Okay.
They had a lot of classical, but they had folk, they had blues, they had jazz, they had flamenco, you name it, they had it. So I was listening to all music. So I was like, it's all good to me.
That's great. So this is why, I can hear you play in a very straight ahead swinging way, like with somebody that we're going to hear next with James Moody, that you had a long, loving, probably very funny relationship with. Because if anybody is funnier than you in jazz, Moody might be one of those few people,
He
right?
was an angel, man. He was such
There
a such
it is.
a wonderful person and a great blessing in my life to be around somebody like that.
Was true. But then also, you are one of the deeper students of Elvin Jones. I feel like you've gone a little deeper with absorbing what Elvin did than many other drummers. And you also sound great playing rock. So the point is, your upbringing was ready made for you to be this versatile and not to put music in boxes and kind of play everything, right?
I enjoy having the variety of contexts to play in. I
Sure.
always try to let the music tell me what to play. Now, when I say music, that means the context of the situation. If
Right.
I'm playing with Mike Brecker, that's different than playing with Lee Konitz. That's different than playing with Lockjaw. That's different than playing with Moody. Different than Stan Getz. You know, you
And
got
not
to.
to mention, I don't know how much you did it, but I do know that you actually did work with Joe Henderson and Sonny Rollins also.
Oh,
So even, I mean, a large slice of your career has been adjusting little knobs to play with very different master saxophonists.
I love the saxophone, and that's the challenge for me is to gain the trust of the other musicians
Hmm.
and
Well,
try to make them feel good.
well
That's
let's
that's the whole thing.
okay, beautiful. Well, let's hear you with James Moody, and let's talk about trust. As it, some of your relationships are 2 years long, and others of them are 30 years long. And let me just kind of get this right, if I can. I've got a million notes here, but I think I've got it somewhere that I can find it. So it, at least on your bio, it says you worked with Moody roughly from 1996 to 2010. Sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what we're going to hear, this is James Moody Quartet, with Hank Jones on piano, Adam Nussbaum on drums. I'm assuming Ted Kuhlman on bass, maybe?
Todd,
Todd Kuhlman?
Todd
Todd Kuhlman?
Coleman. I was so thrilled that Moody wanted to include me in this project. I was so
Beautiful.
excited.
Well, let's hear it and then see what you are. Adam, listen to it if you can, like you're not on the date, and see what pops up for you. Hear it like hearing it for the first time. This is going to be Tad Dameron's Our Delight
Okay.
and James Moody Quartet with Todd Kuhlman, Adam Nussbaum, and the great Hank Jones. Let's go. man, that's some swinging stuff. I mean, how could it not be? So James Moody on tenor, you know what I noticed is that he's got that big, fat, rich, great sound that makes you think of the cats even older than him, like Ben Webster and Coleman Hawkins, Don Byas. But he also, you can hear him thinking like Keith Jarrett does to create different lines and not the obvious lines. He's really, I think he's stretching.
He was so inspiring to be around because he was a bebop master, but he was always buying like all the cat's books. I mean, he was always shedding
Really,
out of Bergonzi's books, and
really.
he loved the fact that I had played with Michael and Lieb, and he loved those cats, man.
Wow.
He loved hearing other vocabulary.
So
And
he
he
was
was
so
always looking, man. I
so
never
he was
met anybody who maintained so much curiosity.
well, it sounds like you know how some people stay still, like if you hear oh, I don't know. I mean, if you heard Eubie Blake when he was 100, he was playing the way he did when he was 26
No,
probably.
he was perpetually evolving, Moody. He
Right.
was very curious, and it was so inspiring to be around somebody who was so thoroughly connected to the tradition and a master of that tradition, but was like, okay, next, I got to keep going. I'm hungry.
Well, I mean, of course, Miles is the ultimate example of being able to throw the past away and move forward
But
without.
his playing doesn't change much.
You think Miles's playing doesn't change much through the styles.
No, the
But here,
styles change, but if you hear him in 1948 and hear him in 1968, I did that one day.
uh,
I listened to Juan Lapon from 69, and then I listened to Paris from 1948, which actually had Moody, Tad Damron, and Kluk on it.
okay.
Paris Jazz Festival. He's playing strong and high. Then I listened to 69. The context is different, but he's playing, great time, great sound, great commitment to what he was
You
doing.
think there's a lot of stylistic similarity. You're saying Miles didn't change that much as a trumpet player. You think?
The situations, he changed the situations. He was
I
very
see.
masterful with that.
Well, so let me ask you this. I mean, I've heard Moody play a little bit. I've met him once or twice, but I didn't get to be around him a lot. And like people like you and Roberta Gambarini, this guy is like your soul. He's part of your family, right? And people who are really close to him. My impression from what you just taught us is that Moody was like other musicians who really did not stay in the past and kept on evolving in their style. And the people who come to mind for me are Max Roach, Frank Foster, and Lee Morgan. All three of them kept on kind of evolving, getting more and more modern. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people who've gone through and morphing on this whole yellow brick road.
Well, let me tell you the one time that I had a real conversation with Moody, and it was hilarious. And I want your reaction since you know him very well, and I met him maybe twice. So I used to play on the street in Harvard Square, Adam, when I was a student in Boston. And I would do it just because it was a chance to shed. I could play Bolivia, I could play Higher Ground by Stevie, I could play any damn thing I wanted. And back then I remember thinking, well, I'll always make at least $8, which was enough for dinner at that point. So, it was partially the music, partially the bread. Anyway, I'm out there one day. Now, keep in mind that if you're in Harvard Square, you're a stone's throw from the Regatta Bar in the Charles Hotel, which is a major jazz club. I wasn't thinking about that day. So I'm out there playing solo tenor, just playing tunes in time, but alone. And this little African American man comes over and he says, "Man, you sound good. You sound real good." And he puts $2 in my case. And at this point in the 1980s, I would say that $1 was like a standard thing to put in the case if you're hearing street musicians. And anything more than that was considered pretty generous. So at that
Cool.
point, I remember thinking, wow, what a nice cat. He put $2 in. So he goes, "Yeah, you sound good. You sound real good." And he says, "Actually, you sound better than that." And he put two more bucks in my case. So now I had $4 from James Moody, but I did not yet know that it was Moody. Here's the punchline. So he says, "Man, you sound so good. You made me want to go back to my hotel and practice." And like an idiot, I said, "Oh, do you play saxophone?" And he goes, yeah, my name's Moody, James Moody. And I started screaming. I went, ah, ah! It was like the monk painting, or Macaulay Culkin. Like I said, I can't believe you're James Moody and you were out here hearing me play all this bullshit. He's like, no, man, you sound really good, So, I mean, that was my beautiful interaction with James Moody that was completely random on the street.
He had just an incredible spirit, man. I mean, he was an incredible human being. So generous, such a good cat, man. I mean,
And
a
of
real
course,
treasure.
but this is also a situation where you're not going to be dealing with your kind of rock and Elvin and other elements. You're going to be thinking about swinging your ass off with Moody, and you're going to be in that bag, right?
Man, when I come to a situation, I
Yeah,
let the music inform me as far as which way I should try to accompany those individuals.
sure.
Now, when I sit down, I'm bringing my whole life to what's going on.
Sure.
And I also bring a pretty broad knowledge and understanding of the history
Yes.
because I've made it a point to study because there's certain elements that transcend style. Good sound, good time, good ideas, good feel. These things transcend style.
Sure.
So I try to bring all that. And then the people I play with are going to profoundly affect how I play. Now, that record date was one of those things where I was pinching myself because I'm thinking how fortunate I was to play with these masters.
With Hank Jones and James Moody.
And here's another thing that happened on the second day of the date was easy, man.
Mm-hmm.
We did one or two takes of all these tunes that were part of their history and part of my homework and my history too, knowing all those tunes. So the second day we get to the date, I get there, the date's supposed to start like at 10. I get there a quarter of. Hank is already there. And he's finishing playing Body and Soul solo piano. So when he's done, I go, and he turns around and he goes, well, thank you very much, Adam. That's very kind of you. And I said, Hank, that was gorgeous. And he goes, Adam, this is fascinating. He plays the first chord, then the second chord of the tune. He plays it, and he goes, when I change this fingering over here and change the voicing with my left hand, it gives it a whole other character. And I'm thinking, how many times has he played Body and Soul in his life? And he was looking at me like a kid who found it for the first time. He lit up like the little kid in the candy store, like, I found something new here. This guy's 88 years old. And I'm going, Hank, this is so inspiring to see this from you, man. Man, I can't tell you how thrilled I am. And I said, this is such a treat for me. I said, your brother was one of my mentors, and he was so, forget what an influence he was musically, he was just such a kind human being, Elvin.
Of course, not right now. Just to clarify for folks, we're talking about Elvin, not Thad, right?
Right, Elvin Jones, the drummer. Yeah. I mean, this is probably one of the greatest families in the history of jazz. You had Hank Jones, Thad, you had Elvin Jones, the baby of the family.
Can I ask you a very quick question?
Wait, so let me finish this. So Hank says, so I say, Hank, I'm so thrilled. I mean, I can't tell you what an honor it is to play with you. And your brother was such an influence on me and so kind to me and gracious with me and encouraging. And he was nice. And Hank goes, well, he'd be very proud of you. It was so sweet, man. I mean, I cherished that. I mean,
let me ask you a question about the Jones family.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a rumor over the years that there was another Jones brother at home who played the drums as well as Elvin in another way, who never, either he passed away or he didn't stick with music. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I am aware of the fact that Elvin had a twin brother that passed away as an infant.
Wow. Okay.
Because Elvin was Elvin Ray Jones.
That I remember, yeah.
And the twin was Alvin Roy.
Really?
Yeah.
So you know what? All of us in jazz, we listen to music. We love Elvin. We love Train. Who goes around and thinks Elvin was a twin? I didn't even know that. That's incredible.
Well,
He didn't grow up as a twin, but he had that. That was his coming into the world. He was a twin. I'm trying to
yeah.
imagine a twin of Elvin. Unbelievable.
Well, unfortunately, he passed away at a very young age.
Can I share something with you about Elvin? That's some inside shit that I got from Jimmy Cobb. I really wasn't. I mean, expecting this. I'm a little younger. I maybe met Jimmy 2 or 3 times, but this is the pearl that I got from him.
What a
We're backstage,
treasure he was, too, man.
incredible, and we're backstage at Symphony Space. He was playing with one band. I was playing with another. Long story short, oh, but the band I was playing with was basically the Gil Evans band, conducted by Maria Schneider, playing sketches of Spain, trumpet solos by Wallace Roney. And I'm in the woodwind section. It's great to do it. And then I find myself in the dressing room immediately after this kind of thrilling, great New York moment performance. And there's Jimmy Cobb. And I thought, holy shit, Jimmy was on sketches. I got to ask him about this. I said, what an opportunity and what timing. I said, Jimmy, let me ask you something. There are no credits on those damn Columbia records. They don't list who's in the orchestra or in the band. They don't do it on Porgy and Bess. They don't do it on sketches. I said, I know you were involved. I know Elvin was involved. Can you school me who did what on Sketches of Spain? And Jimmy goes, I played drums and Elvin played percussion. I said, okay, well, let me ask you another question. So who played castanets on Sketches of Spain? And Jimmy looks at me and goes, Elvin. Did you know that Elvin's the castanet player? Unbelievable. These little things, that are not in liner notes. Well, Adam, let me move us forward because you played with so many incredible people. And it's, of course, great to talk about Moody and Elvin, but I want to try to get through a lot of the folks you played with. Can I give you a quick list of folks and you could give us like a 1-minute soundbite of them just to name check them and fit them in with what you know or what you remember?
Go ahead, bro. I'll do my best.
Okay, well, how about this is one I didn't know about. 2003 to 06 with playing with Joe Sample. Now, was that kind of a fusion funk kind of situation or straight ahead too?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't fusion. Basically, Joe is a wonderful composer.
Yeah.
And he played some good acoustic piano. And we played a lot of his tunes in an acoustic format with Jay Anderson.
So this is very different than the Crusaders, right?
Yeah, but we played maybe one or two of those tunes, and then maybe we would play them, and we just adapted it for trio.
Sure.
Because he wanted to have that. He enjoyed, he had a signature sound on the Fender, for sure. But he also had a thing on the regular piano, and I think he wanted to explore more of that.
Okay.
And that was fun, man. That was a fun time. We had quite a few good tours. We had a very nice tour with we did some stuff with Randy Crawford, who sang incredibly great.
Oh, excuse me, is she the gal who sang Street Life on that record? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really all I know her from, but
she's a wonderful singer, man, and she's happening. And it was a lot of fun to play some of that music within an acoustic situation and with a little bit more latitude where things weren't just as locked in as the records. And Joe was good people, man. Good times with Joe.
Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to put people in like little blocks by instrument. So I know that you were really a member of Stan Getz's band roughly between 82 and 84. And I know that you worked maybe a little less frequently, but that you worked with Sonny Rollins and Joe Henderson. Can we talk about those three incredible tenor players that you had the great fortune and deserve it, of course, to work with?
I was such a rookie when I got the chance to play with Sonny Rollins. Al Foster had recommended me.
Okay.
He couldn't do it because I think he was out with Miles. And I ended up doing a weekend with Sonny out in Milwaukee.
No kidding.
And needless to say, I was pretty freaked.
Excuse me, what year and who was in the band?
I think it was either 77 or 78. So I was like 21 or 22.
Oh boy, that young. Wow, you're green.
And it was an interesting band. It was Mark Soskin, Jerry Harris, Sammy Figueroa, and a gentleman named Orel Ray who was playing an amplified 12-string acoustic guitar.
So excuse me, Jerome Harris is equally adept on bass and guitar. He must have been playing bass here.
Yeah, he was playing electric bass. Yeah. And I was just I couldn't believe that I was pretty freaked out. And I'll be so great. I was so grateful to Sammy Figueroa, who said, you know, man, because I said, I can't believe I'm playing with Sonny Rollins, man. I mean, it's like I can't believe it.
Uh-huh.
And so Sammy goes, hey man, listen, Sonny puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like you.
Yeah. Well, and at the age of 21 on a bandstand with Sonny, that was probably very helpful.
Yes. And I just tried to swing and take care of business.
Sure. And I imagine Sonny enjoyed you, and I imagine you had great gigs.
It was 2 nights at Summerfest out in Milwaukee, and it was 2 nights, and I've consequently over the years seen Sonny on numerous occasions, and even this past year I've had a few nice phone conversations with him, and it's always enlightening to speak with him, and he's another one of these true treasures. I mean,
There's no doubt.
we could call him one of the greatest improvisers ever.
There's no doubt. Well, a totally different kind of improviser. I take it with Getz, you were really in his band. This is not any kind of one-off. And I seem to remember you playing with Stan, but can you remind us who was in the quartet while you were there?
Well, it was initially Jim McNeely and Mark Johnson, and there is one little document of us playing in 1983 at the White House.
I'm sorry, Adam. I had a bad Neely on piano, and who's on bass? Mark Johnson.
Mark Johnson, yeah, and
I think I might have seen that video. That's a hell of a band, and as we know, Stan never had anything less than A+ bands. He had the best rhythm section players for 30 years, didn't he?
oh,
I mean,
st- you know,
Chick Corea and Joanne Brackeen and Clint Houston and Billy Hart and Elliott and just
well,
incredible
one of the
players.
guys who there was a bunch of different uh, along the way. Dennis Irwin played bass on a few occasions.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Mike Formanak, George Mraz, another unheralded master piano player that I learned so much from, Albert Daly.
I wanted to talk to you about Albert Daly, and I had a little list of great pianists that you worked with, but I mean, you may have been old enough to have heard Albert when you were real young, and I know you played with him, but I never got to see him. I know that his life got cut short. I think he was maybe 49 when he passed, but I must say, you take the greatest pianists of that generation. I mean, Kenny Barron, Fred Hirsch, what have you, McNeely. And to me, Albert Daly is every bit as great as any of those cats. I mean,
Oh,
unless you're talking about Art Tatum or Herbie Hancock, like I'll take Al Daly.
Albert Daly was great piano player, and I used to do a Sunday session with him at Folk City.
Where was Folk City?
Folk City is directly across the street from the Blue Note in New York. Now it's called something else. That the
On West 3rd Street, right there near 6th Avenue.
On West 3rd Street. It was on the south side of the street.
Okay.
And they used to have a jam session there every Sunday afternoon. And I initially started going in there just to sit in.
Sure.
And then Albert said to me, I want you making the gig. So we would play a set. And then it was usually either Bob Bodley or Dennis Irwin playing bass. Variety of cats would be in there. Sometimes Milton Suggs, different cats. But Carter Jefferson was playing tenor.
I loved his tenor playing with Woody Shaw and other people. Yeah.
Man, I'll tell you, playing with Albert, he really kicked my ass big time. And I firmly believe you get better by playing with people who play better than you.
Sure.
It helps raise your game. And I was getting my ass kicked by the finest. And I'm so grateful for the time I had with Albert. And
sure.
I actually recorded my very first real record date. I did 2 tunes on an Albert Daly record.
I did not know that. Let me recap really quickly for people who don't know. So Albert Daly he had incredible technique, classically trained. African American pianist, I think from
From
Baltimore
Baltimore,
originally.
right?
And I've tried to dig deep about him because, again, if it's not about fame, if it's about the actual music, it doesn't get any better than Albert Daly. So he was with Art Blakey a couple of different times in the Messengers. Didn't record a lot, but I think he's on the record Backgammon with Art
He's
Blakey.
on so many things, man. He played with Woody Herman. He played with Stan. He played with. When I first saw Sonny Rollins at the Vanguard in 1972, was Albert Daly playing with him.
Right, and not only that, you know what I didn't know until very recently, somewhere in the cracks, he was in Elvin's band also.
Well, he was doing all kinds of things. He did a bunch of records with him. His steady gig for a while was with that singer, I think, Demita Joe.
I remember that name, yeah.
You know, a lot of cats got ensconced in a steady gig working with singers
Sure.
where they may not have had the visibility out there playing in like a more hard bop or whatever kind of situation. But Albert was really a great, great. Yeah, he went too soon. There's a beautiful record called The Master with Stan Getz, which has
Okay, I
got
wanted to ask you,
Jabali.
wasn't there, I mean, look, let's put it this way. The greatest compliment you could have as a musician, as a pianist, is Stan Getz making a duo record with you. And I believe there's a record called Poetry.
Absolutely.
It's just Albert
Absolutely.
Daly and Stan. Is that
That's
right?
right. That's right. Yeah. And then years later, after Albert had passed away, Stan did a duo tour with Kenny Barron.
That I remember. Um, well, so tell us. I mean, this is the only thing I've been able to find online. There is one of those Marion McPartland piano jazz shows with
Great.
Albert Daly. He seems to be a very gentle and thoughtful and smart guy.
Brilliant. This was a brilliant individual. You know, you don't look up on stuff like this. This guy had put a lot of time in and he understood what was going on. There was a scene, man, in Baltimore. There were some great cats that came out
Well,
of there.
we know Gary Bartz came out of there, and much later Gary Thomas and
There was
Bob.
Dave Hubbard was from there, the tenor player.
Yeah.
There was Harold White, the drummer, was from down there. And then, you know, Dennis Chambers is from there, Gary Granger.
Well, suffice it to say, pianists especially and jazz fans in general don't sleep on Albert Daly. Please go check him out. I mean, I love him as much as you do. He's one of the true greats. Now, this question will always come up. I will ask it delicately. How did you feel about Stan Getz as a person? Was he kind to you? Was he pretty cool?
He was cool at times. And then, like they said, he was a nice bunch of guys.
Well, that was Zoot Sims's line, right? Stan
Yeah.
Getz hyphen, he's a nice bunch of guys.
Well, let's put it this way. I think I've rarely played with anybody who was such a natural musician.
Interesting. Now, when you say that, let's do it briefly because we have a lot of other subjects to try to jump to. But so I've heard that about Chet Baker. People said, you know, he didn't read that much, but he heard every damn thing there was.
Chet and Stan, they could hear everything. They didn't know any theoretical information.
Amazing.
They didn't know about chord changes. They totally played by ear and listening. They had that gift. I mean, Stan, what a sound. I mean, if you never heard Stan Getz live and you only heard him on record, you're aware of the character of his tone. That
Sure.
beautiful tone. People say, oh, it's so soft and gentle.
Well, Stan could burn also. We both know that.
But he was one of the loudest tenor players you ever heard with that tone. I'm serious.
I heard Stan twice, but I wasn't in an acoustic situation to notice
Bro,
that. He was that loud on the bandstand? Really?
He was playing a number 5 reed, bro. It's like a tree trunk in his mouth.
You don't have to tell me. I wouldn't play a number 5. It's crazy.
I mean, they used to call him the sound. So here you are, you're playing with somebody whose sound is amazing.
Right.
He's got phenomenal time. He's got better time than most any drummer he'd hire.
Oh, he swung his ass off.
And he could hear anything.
Well, let me ask you 2 questions about Stan, Adam, if I may. The
I
first
wish he was around now that I have a little bit more together. to play with
more
them.
knowledge, more awareness, whatever you want to call it.
I'm just a little more developed, and I understand things a little better. And I'm a little. Hopefully, I'm a little better than I was 28 years ago, 30 years ago.
I imagine you're a lot better. Well, let's 2 questions about your
That's
time.
almost 40 years ago. I played with the guy. What did I know?
Well, let's talk about you and Stan real quick, and then we're going to get into a bunch of other cats you work with. What, in a nutshell, if you were taking a test and you could only write 2 sentences, what did you learn from playing with Stan? And I don't mean things that he said verbally, probably more things that happened in the music, but whatever you'd like to relate. What did you feel you learned from playing with Stan?
Intention. It's a good question. Support.
You supporting him or vice versa or both?
Well, me supporting him
Yeah.
and knowing how to get under somebody.
What does that mean?
Supporting him this way, coming up from underneath him, not coming down from on top of him.
And how do you make that difference as a drummer in a quartet?
I'll tell you what happened to me, man. And this was true. And this is what really was for me a very good education. I came into the gig right after I was playing with Schofield and Swallow.
Yes.
Now, that's a great trio. We were electric guitar, electric bass. Then I'm getting, and Stan likes my swing and my intensity. But now I'm in a situation that's completely acoustic. Tenor saxophone, acoustic piano, upright bass with maybe a little amp. He wanted everything that I was doing with Sco, but he didn't want it up here. He wanted it down there because I had to play the acoustic situation more appropriately.
So after Sco, it was almost like putting a mute button on yourself.
Yeah, but he wanted everything I was bringing to Sco's situation, but he just wanted it at a lower volume.
Well,
and he said to me, and I'll never forget what he said to me. He goes, "Man, you swing great, man." But Victor Lewis, who had been in there before me, and a great drummer, one of my favorite musicians.
Sure.
He'd been playing with Dexter, Woody Shaw, Stan. He was enamored within that context of acoustic.
Right.
I was not. And Stan said to me, "Man, you swinging great, but Victor plays the gig better than you." And you know what? He was right. And I learned something because I realized that intensity is not volume. It's commitment and intention and focus.
So very quickly, not to deviate, because I got one more Stan question for you. I've noticed over the years, the 2 drummers that I've heard, tip so that they're almost inaudible, but swinging their asses off. And it really struck me, wow, this is so soft, but it's so cooking. And I'm sure you'll have something to say about this, are Dennis McCrell and Lewis Nash. And then I realized, wait a second, man, there's one motherfucker who's a master drummer who plays even softer than them. He plays so soft, sometimes you can't even hear the drums, Billy Mintz. So what do you have to say about maybe Dennis and Lewis in that way that they can burn while at a very low volume?
Well, it's like anything. You have to be doing it. You have to be in situations where that's what's the appropriate thing to do.
Okay.
You have to understand, man, I've been in situations that are all over. Playing with Mike Brecker with EWI and all that electric is one thing. Playing with Sco is another. But then playing in acoustic situations, you got to be able to bring that thing, but you got to get in there.
Well, let's hear a thing.
It's like, if somebody talks to you like this and looks you right in the eye, they're not messing around. It's the intention. It's that focus. And that's a lot harder to do on the drums.
Well, I wanted to ask you one more thing about Stan, which is...
Because those guys you mentioned, like Lewis Nash and Dennis and Billy Mintz, they're all fantastic. They all play great.
That's right.
And they can bring that. And what I learned from Stan was Well, if you were starting here and you were going to go up, it's like, let's not start here. Let's be able to start down here.
Right.
Can you bring your bottom down lower?
So the simple question is, did you learn to tip better playing with Stan?
I hope I did.
Well, my other question is, Stan as a person, from everything I can tell, yeah, he could be grumpy and this and that, but it seems like he was very intelligent. And of course, hearing him, we know how much beauty there was there. So I guess my question is there something else that Stan said to you, either informally in the hang, in a restaurant, or on a plane, or on the gig, that really stuck with you?
I wouldn't know where
Is
to
there a
go
lot of
with
it?
it. There was different things. I'll say this much. He was very respectful to me, my wife. He
Okay,
was a gentleman.
that matters.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stan Getz. All right, now, your life, I can't imagine what your life would be like without the saxophone. It's an interesting thing to say to a drummer. We got to get into Lieb. So let's hear you with Dave Liebman, and then let's talk about it. So I think what we
Uh-oh.
have is your kind of collective trio that you cats have called We Three, and it's Dave Liebman on saxophone, Adam Nussbaum on drums, and I forgot on my notes, is Swallow the third person?
None other than.
Okay, Steve Swallow, Adam Nussbaum, and Dave Liebman. Let's hear a little of this, and then let's get into talking about Dave Liebman.
All right. I'll jump right back. I'll come right back.
Sure. And we're back. Apologies to the fade for one of my musical and personal fathers, Dave Liebman. So you go way back with Lieb. I have here, it's apparently there was a band with Dave Liebman and John Schofield and yourself from 1978 to 1983. Is that accurate, Adam?
More like 81, 82, I think.
But this was a working band with
Oh
Sid
yeah.
and was Swallow
This
part of
was this was the first real working band where I was playing with the heavies, and for me, an invaluable education that I had. I'll be forever grateful for Dave and that band.
This
Getting to
was
play with Ron McClure was in
Ron,
the band, and Sco was in there, and a great trumpet player. You recorded with Hino.
with Terra Masahino. So this is
He
a
was in the
quintet.
band, and then we also did a tour with Kenny Kirkland.
Unbelievable. Wow.
And this for me was a great experience. I just have a lot of. I think of the situations I got to be in. I used to hear Dave with Elvin all the time. The band with Grossman, the Lighthouse Band. I used to hear Dave playing, and Gene, right, and then I used to hear Dave playing in Portchester with that guitar player Link Chamberlain. They used to play at a joint up there called Rabson's. We used to drive up there when we were like 16 or 17
Wow.
because at that point Portchester had 18 drinking age and Connecticut was 21.
Well, excuse me. Let me geographical clarification. If you live in New York City and you go north and you're past the Bronx and you're in Westchester, Portchester, New York, which is actually the birthplace of our good buddy John Abercrombie that we're going to have to talk about. Right. Portchester, New York is right on the Connecticut line of Greenwich, right. Connecticut. So, right. So the point is, as a Connecticut boy who was that close to the New York border, some things would be different over the border, I suppose.
Yeah, you could drink at 18 instead of 21.
So you were there in New York all the time.
But the music was always pulling me in. I mean, when I was young, I was going down to the Vanguard. I remember being in high school and seeing Monk at the Vanguard, Sonny Rollins, Blakey, you name it, Elvin, Mel.
Incredible.
This was for me, the most education other than playing with people that played better than me was being able to be in the room and actually experience what was happening. Okay. They weren't names. They weren't records. There was no video. There was no internet. I'd be at the Village Vanguard sitting in the corner right next to the drums. I mean, right next to the drums.
You mean when Elvin was playing?
Everybody.
And Mel Lewis and whoever.
Everyone. Elvin, Mel, Jack, Tony, Roy, Billy Higgins, Al Foster, Billy Hart, Vernell Fournier. The list goes on and on.
Incredible.
I mean, probably I and Max Roach. I mean, whoever was alive, I probably got to see him live.
This is incredible. Well, let me shift gears on you, Adam. I
Okay.
wish I could have been there for all those nights at the Vanguard. You know, I'm just a hair younger than you, and the first
Wait,
people
a hair? Come on.
a hair, yes, hair. I saw the Mel Lewis band at the Vanguard when I was a teenager because Mel was still alive and healthy and leading the band, and that was really something else. And I also heard a band at the Vanguard. It's the only time I think I heard Woody Shaw. It was Mal Waldron's group, and they didn't play anything fast. Everything was medium or slow.
With
Woody Shaw,
Blackwell
yeah,
and Reggie.
Reggie Johnson.
Oh,
Not
okay.
no, I'm sorry, Reggie
Reggie
Workman. You're right.
Workman. Was
Reggie
Reggie
Workman, Ed
Workman?
Blackwell, Charlie Rouse,
Yeah.
and Woody Shaw.
I think they did a record with that band.
They may have. Well, so the Vanguard we have a whole interview on that. Let me switch gears completely. But first, what would you like to say to and about Dave, and what would you like to say to and about Sco?
I love these guys. I mean, I'm so grateful for the experience I had playing with them. I
But
mean,
they're still family in the way that if you had a gig with them tonight, you would fall right into it, right?
oh, I mean, they're deep in my DNA, man.
Mm-hmm.
I like these are brothers of mine. They're I'm an only child, but I have my brothers from the music, and it's
Yeah,
like I have people that are my musical fathers. They're as much a father to me as my biological father, as far as how they helped shape me. And I like to say my heroes built the foundation for what I do. I'm just trying to work on the building.
sure. Well, okay, Adam, that's beautiful. Let me switch gears completely. Here are four incredible musicians that you worked with in Europe, and I'd like to know what you have to say about them. The question is, where did I put my little list? But I think I know. Well, off the top of my head, Kenny Wheeler, Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen, and a really great piano player in Italy, Rita Marcatulli.
Fantastic. There's
Now,
so many there's so many great players over there.
I heard Rita on a Sal Nistico record, and she sounded as good as any American pianist. I mean, as if that's not like the wrong way to say it. She
Yeah,
was
I mean,
deep into it.
listen, the music is out there for everybody.
Yes.
I mean, and now more than ever. The unfortunate thing is that now, because of what's happening with this pandemic, and unfortunately, the way things have started to morph, where everything is becoming more oriented towards this virtual world, there's not the chance to be on the bandstand, which is truly the place where you learn how to play.
Well, let's talk about something on the bandstand that we haven't even addressed. Let's talk about Niels Henning and Jay Anderson and how you interact with the best bass players that you've worked with, the people where you really feel it.
Well, it's a strange thing to say, but also for a drummer, the best way you're going to get your groove together is by playing with great bass players.
Right.
Because we don't get that thing from other drummers. We get a sound, we get ideas, we get vocabularies from other drummers,
Okay.
but we don't play with other drummers. We play with bass players. So for me, as a drummer, playing with great bass players is a joy. And when you play with people and you can find that point of agreement, it's like they're
you mean rhythmic agreement, groove, right?
yeah, groove and feel. The first thing people hear is sound, like I said, then they hear your time and your feel. When I play with certain bass players, they're so there, I don't even know they're there. We're so connected.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful feeling. And like, Steve Swallow, I mean, this is a treasure. I mean, he's a phenomenal musician. He's one of my favorite people. I mean, great bass player, great composer. I mean, he plays great bass. And then when he solos, I always give him stuff. I always say, you playing that bebop.
Well, quick question about
But he
Swallow.
sounds like Bach. I mean, the clarity of his lines and the beauty of what he plays. I mean, he's incredible.
What year did Swallow give up the acoustic bass? And obviously, it hasn't affected him as a musician. What year did he move to electric exclusively, and why?
Um, he'll tell you an interesting love-hate story about it. He hated loving it, he loved hating it, but he just had to focus on doing it.
Hmm.
I think it was, I'm not exactly sure, maybe late 60s. I think one of the last records that he did do on Upright was a trio record with Steve Kuhn and Aldo Romano.
Wow,
Um, Late 60s, early 70s. I'm not sure.
that's around when he gave up the upright. You think?
Yeah. But I mean, he was such a great upright player.
I
But
know.
you see, the thing is this: Swallow, he's bringing everything of his experience to the electric bass.
That's right.
He's bringing his love of Percy Heath, his love of Wilbur Ware, his love of those cats, Doug Watkins. He brings that to the electric bass.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can hear it, but I hadn't thought of those particular people. That's beautiful.
Those are people that he always mentioned to me.
So let's tie in a few people. Steve Swallow, essentially married to his partner Carla Bley. You got to play with that big band at some point, and we're going to watch a video now. Also, Swallow used to play duo with Sheila Jordan at the Page 3 in the Village, and Sheila told me and us, people could argue, but she feels that she probably kind of invented the voice and bass duo thing in jazz with Swallow before Harvey, before Cameron.
I
And,
wouldn't doubt it. I
and
wouldn't doubt it.
it's very interesting.
Sheila,
So
she's a treasure.
she is beyond, and she's been in this series too, and we got to get to her another time. But Swallow playing with Sheila, Swallow and Carla with their musical and personal partnership, and then Sheila and Kenny Wheeler in this band with you. We're going to hear the George Gruntz Concert Jazz Band, and I'm pretty sure that at the beginning of the video we're going to see my buddy from the Gil Evans band for you too, Dave Bargeron on trombone. And the next thing we're going to see is one of the great musicians who passed away at 80 just this month. Rest in peace, Howard Johnson. So it brings up a lot of things. Let's see you with the George Gruntz band, and let's see who's in this particular edition of the band.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the song is called Mexicali Pose.
Posse.
Posse. Oh, it was written wrong on YouTube. Posse is very different than pose. Okay. Mexicali.
Maybe it was a pose. One never knows.
I don't know. So, Herschel, are we okay with, can we play George Gruntz now?
I'm not sure I've ever seen this.
You may not have, and I didn't watch enough of it to see that Kenny was in it, but I can tell you for a fact that Barge and Hojo are in it.
Was Lou in there too?
I'm hoping. It was just Lou's birthday, I think, yesterday, and we all miss him, like the Dickens. And I played his memorial concert with the Gil Evans band at Manhattan School of Music. It was incredible.
We were there.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Say that again. Who was there?
I remember playing at a memorial concert for Lou, playing with Gil's band. I think I played "Gone" or something.
Oh, you know
might
what?
have been there too.
I didn't play on all of it. You played on part of it. Tane played on part of it.
That's
right?
I only played one tune. We all mixed it up.
And this is the one where Tane played on Spinning Wheel and Will Lee sang it.
Yeah.
So Lou Soloff, I was going to say gone but not forgotten. Nah, man, he's still here. Louis in the air all the time. There's so many stories. Every trumpet player in New York loves his ass. I mean, I love him.
We got to think of this, man. So many of these people who have moved on.
Yeah.
To the big bandstand in the sky. The spirit is so strong with us.
Yeah.
They've only left the building.
Well, let's tie this in. Let's watch this Gruntz video. Let's see who's in it. Is there Sheila? Is there Lou? Is Kenny Wheeler there? And then, we don't have a whole ton of time, but we have to talk about Gil Evans. Okay, so let's hear George Gruntz, and then let's make our way to Gil from him.
Okay.
All right, man?
Sure. There's Barge, right?
That's Marsh. That's right. Woo!
Mike Richmond.
Woo! Yeah, Adam, you're driving that bus, man. No doubt. So, yeah, all there in one place. Dave Bargeron and Lou Soloff, both of whom, with Gil Evans for over 30 years, we can tie that in. I didn't see Sheila Jordan, and they didn't show everybody. I wish they had shown the whole band in, section close-ups. But what was interesting about George Gruntz's big band, it's one of the only places in the last 40 years that you would have seen Joe Henderson in a big band. And the other tenor player was usually Larry Schneider, who's going to be here on our program and my interview in April. I got Larry Schneider to do it.
Oh, great. Well, please say hello for me. I haven't seen him for a long time.
I will. Well, if you want to know, he's actually been posting things on Facebook where he makes the keyboard and drum parts and then plays tenor over them, and he sounds great.
He's on the left coast.
Yes, and also you never see, since Stan Kenton in the 1950s, you generally did not see Lee Konitz in big bands, but there must have been something about George Gruntz, the music, the money, something that he could convince Lee Konitz and Joe Henderson to be in a big band at the height of their powers.
George, very good soul, good writer. He put these bands together, and he had a buddy. They went to school together, Gerard Lull, and Gerard took care of all the business, and he was able to coordinate things with different banks and find funding to be able to facilitate putting these kind of bands together. I mean,
and you guys were always in Europe. Whether you were in Europe or New York, half the band had to get on a plane, right?
oh yeah, and he would put together. He was kind of like Duke in a way. He would hire guys for what they brought to the table. Yeah,
Right.
he wanted that, and there was such a wide variety. I mean, before I did the band, he had Peter Erskine, he had Daniel Umair. He did a tour in '78. Woody Shaw, Sco, Elvin, Lou Tabakin.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Okay. Well, and can I ask you a question about Elvin now? I heard, and Adam, you probably know this better than me, but it's real hard to find in history books. I heard that Elvin did a short period of time as Duke Ellington's drummer, and Duke purportedly offered him the full-time gig, and Elvin said, no, I can't. Maybe he was with Train, he was doing other things. But Elvin with Duke sounds fascinating to me.
there's a recording of it.
Oh, yeah? Let's see. Okay, Duke Ellington.
Elvin Shea Duke, January '66.
Wow, no kidding. Is that just
And
a
what
trio
happened
band?
was, this was after Train, after he left Train. And one of the reasons that he left Train was because it was with Rashid.
Yes. And actually, they were in the band together for a minute, right? And I'm sure
Yeah.
Elvin didn't enjoy that a whole lot, is
Well,
my guess.
I think Train wanted what both of these guys could bring.
Yes.
But I think what eventually happened was McCoy left. He couldn't hear himself. It didn't really come together this way. So what happened was Duke offered Elvin the gig, but there was another drummer there too.
Like Sam Woodyard or somebody?
I think it was Steve Little, I believe. I'm
I've
not
heard of him.
sure.
I don't know anything about him, but I know that he
Okay,
played
but
with Duke.
it was another drummer as well.
Huh.
And from what I understand, half the band loved him and half the band didn't.
Okay.
And I think Elvin just wanted to be in a situation where he could just be playing by himself, not in another double drum situation.
Sure.
So I think there was about a week or so, and there's some documentation of it.
Well, the interesting thing is, I think, pairs of instruments, it depends on egos and it depends on the music.
Right.
I mean, for example, if you got Dexter Gordon and Wardell Gray playing the Chase, I don't think they mind having another tenor player in the band. They dug
It's
it.
another story also.
Sure.
When you're in a rhythm section, if you start adding components like two drummers, each drummer's got to do less for the common goal of creating one thing.
Okay.
That's how I think it. And for people to want to do that, you both have to surrender to trying to work together.
Gotcha.
Because it's like when you hear the James Brown band, that band to me sounds like one big drummer. Because everybody is so locked into the time.
Yeah.
It's all about the time when you hear those bands. The guitar player,
Just stay there for 15 minutes
and hang and be in it.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of discipline to just stay in that thing like that. And I remember hearing an interview with Rashid. Train wanted Rashid on Ascension.
Interesting.
And Rashid was young and kind of he even said I was young and cocky. When I asked Train, I said, "Well, am I going to be the only drummer?" Train said, "No, Elvin's going to be there too." And Rashid said, "I ain't making it." So sometimes when you're young, your ego gets out of hand.
Shunzo Ono, who I'm sure you worked with in Gil's band, and he's a dear friend of mine, and we work together when we can. We play
wonderful trumpet player.
He's a great trumpet player, and what is now the Gil Evans Orchestra, I get to play with Shunzo there more than anywhere else. But Shunzo told me that when he was 22, he was in Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers next to Woody Shaw, and he was too arrogant to learn anything, and he still regrets it.
Very often we got to learn to quiet our mind. Nobody's going to mess with you more than yourself.
Well, speaking of minds, I want to talk about two of the most interesting minds, as far as I can tell. I wasn't inside their brain cases, but in the history of music and creative music, I'd like to talk to you about Gil Evans and Michael Brecker in that order. So I believe now you weren't with Gil in the 70s. You weren't old enough to be there with Abercrombie and those cats. You were there in the Sweet Basil early 80s days. Is that right?
I started around 83.
Okay.
And I used to share a studio space in West Beth with John Schofield.
Okay.
Down in the basement, they had studios. And Freddie Waits had a studio across.
Warren Smith, too, I think.
They were, down there in Freddie's space, and Boom used to rehearse there. That was that incredible group.
People who don't know, that was like 8 of the greatest drummers, Freddie Waits.
Yeah, it was Max, Freddie Waits, Omar Clay, Joe Chambers, Steve Barrios, Ray Mantilla. It was serious.
But the point is a lot of gear. You need a big space to rehearse.
And there was a big space there. So that was in West Beth. And so I'd be there quite frequently, and Gil lived there.
Uh-huh.
And I would never see Gil, but I would see Gil's wife, Anita.
Yep.
And I saw Anita, and I said, "Hey, Anita, listen, I just want you to tell Gil," because he was in between bands. There wasn't anything going on. if he puts anything together, I'd love to play with him. So then when they decided to put something together, I guess they'd heard me around a little bit, and I got the call to do that. And Gil was an amazing arranger and just a human being. You know, he was somebody who kept on moving. And I think that's why him and Miles had a very strong bond, because it's like, been there, done that. Let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Now with Gil, then, so you're saying like when the Sweet Basil kind of gig started, that was really long term on Mondays. You were the
Yeah.
first drummer, and basically Danny Gottlieb and Ken Wood were later.
Yes.
Okay, and Steve
Danny
Johns.
came in after me.
Who
I
did?
kept missing the gigs because I had other things. I started being traveling around, and I kept sending in Danny. Now, Danny, the bass player, was Mark Egan. Mark and Danny, they were like of one mind.
Yeah, they're one embryo. And Mark did one of these interviews, and he said they go all the way back, to Miami and even before
Right.
Pat Metheny.
So at a certain point, Gil was like, "Yeah, I like Danny. This is cool." So that gig went away. But then, like a few months later, the Mike Brecker gig came around.
Let's hear something right now with Mike, because I feel like I can't remember quite how much you played with Mike, but you were really part of his band for a good while, right?
His first band, his first working band.
Okay, and that's the band we were talking about with Jay Anderson, maybe before Jeff Andrews. Was it
No,
acoustic?
no. It was Mike Stern,
Yeah.
Jeff Andrews, Kenny Kirkland, and myself.
Oh, Kenny was there before Joey. I didn't know that.
And then while we were out on tour, Sting called Kenny.
And poached him.
He poached him, man. And so then it was like, what are we going to do? And Mike remembered hearing Joey. He played with him sometime. And I remembered, because we needed somebody that could get down and had a great feel.
Well,
And
Joey
I said,
really
yeah.
could do anything. I thought Michael used to play with Joey at some hotel in Westchester.
That's right. That's where he. That's where
Joey was 22, but as we know, he was extremely developed and swinging and great chops. He was heavy at 22, 24.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He was already there, And actually, I got to tour with Joey's quartet in 1994. Still one of the high points of my musical life. His wonderful, crazy brother Gene, who's as heavy a drummer as Joey is a pianist. Not everybody knows that because he's been in London for quite a while.
He's the big brother.
So Calderazzo brothers, and then our bass player was always either Ed Howard or James Genus.
Okay.
And we did a little bit of road stuff. I mean, we drove to Pittsburgh, we drove to Boston and played at Scullers. That was a heavy quartet. I mean, that was a quartet I enjoyed so much, but I felt like I was getting my ass kicked at the same time.
That's how we learn, man.
That's right. Well, so Michael Brecker, who wouldn't learn from Michael Brecker? I'm going to throw you a little curveball here. Here's a live show with Don Grolnick, late lamented, incredible pianist. I mean, great jazz pianist, great composer, great keyboard player and musical director with James Taylor, really a broad musician. And I'm not even going to tell you who's in the band. You watch this and check it out. But suffice it to say, Don Grolnick Ensemble with Adam Nussbaum on drums and Michael Brecker on tenor and some other surprises.
I know you're going to play.
Let's see this. Okay, Herschel. Let's try Don Grolnick. Okay, we just got a little cut off there, but man, that's an interesting band. What a saxophone section. Bill Evans on soprano, Ernie Watts on tenor, on
Alto.
alto, great alto solo. And on the bookends, amazing. Mike Brecker and Stanley Turrentine on tenor, unbelievable. And the beautiful writing of Don Grolnick. There's a song called "The Sleepers" or "The Four Sleepers,"
Four Sleepers, yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it's based on the A section of "Autumn Leaves." That's what it sounds like to me.
Could
Could
be, could be. But that was fun, man. And Stanley Turrentine, man, I'll
Yeah,
tell you, it was really great. And talk about a guy. I remember we're playing one tune, and Ernie plays, with this incredible velocity, and Michael's got these incredible chops, and Bill said, "I'm not going to pick up the tenor. I'm just going to stick with the soprano." And then Michael played his stuff, Bill played, Ernie played, and then Stanley on one of the tunes, he just went beep, boop, bop. He laid like three quarter notes down,
uh-huh.
and he put the whole band in the pocket.
Beautiful.
Just Stanley, just his time and his feel. It was really great, man. I mean,
I believe it.
it was so great because Michael had a lot of that kind of vibe with the funky and the soulful thing. He loved Stanley,
I
and
bet you did.
Stanley and Ernie and Mike, when Stanley was playing, they were like,
Yeah.
it was so sweet to see the love and respect for him. And I've got to show you a CD that I did recently with a wonderful trumpet player out in Colorado named
I know
Brad
Brad.
Good
He's
from
he's incredible
Chicago.
and very incredible, scary trumpet player.
Oh yeah, we did this project and with Ernie about 2 years ago,
Okay.
and that this was a lot of fun. This recording, and it was nice to reconnect again with Ernie and
Sure.
very
Well,
good Canadian piano player on here, Adrian Ferrugia, and a wonderful bass player from Chicago who's like one of the guys who's like, the cats that takes care of all the business, Kelly Sill on
oh yeah,
bass.
he's very funny. I met him one time.
Oh, he's a great cat, and he's a wonderful bass player. I have a good time with this guy.
Dig it. Well, Adam, there are just two more things I want to hit. Oh, what did he say? He said is good. Head is good pianist, bassist, drummer as well. Had a bunch of Facebook. I'm not sure I understand, Herschel, if you can hear me, but Adam, I want to read a quick list of some other great people you played with, and anything that pops out, tell us what you think. Okay. I mean, I know some of these people very close to you, like Vic Juris. We didn't even mention Toots Thielmans. We didn't mention Charles Lloyd, Gary Burton in 1985. We've mentioned Lee Konitz a couple times. You're part of Eliani's trio, Eliani Elias. And there's some other people. Bob Berg has come down the pike playing with you. Bob Brookmeyer, Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Ted Curson. You remember his nickname in New York. We won't say it in the interview. Ronnie Cuber, the world's grumpiest and greatest baritone saxophonist. And a group of incredible piano players, which I wanted to include Al Daly in, but we talked about him. Joey Calderazzo, Paul Bley, and George Cables. God, does the piano get more amazing than that?
Let's not forget Richie Byrack.
Richie, and there was, I know, you had a band, am I right, 1985 to 1994 with Richie and Ron McClure, is that right?
Yep, we played together a lot.
Was that a trio, or was that with Liebman and Sco and other people too?
Well, we had that rhythm section.
Yeah.
And we recorded with Conrad Herwig and Randy Brecker. We did a record.
Okay.
Called, I think, The Amulet. And then we also did a trio record under Ron's name called Inspiration. And then we also did a record under McClure's name. I think it's called McJolt.
With McJolt, that's some Liebman Richie stuff.
With Abercrombie. And that was a lot of fun. And Richie's a fantastic musician. And, I have so much gratitude for these guys who were older than me that I was able to learn from. And these cats were almost like my tour guides.
Okay.
They helped guide me through stuff. They would play things for me. They would help to pique my curiosity and satisfy things I was interested in. And I mean, Richie's one of the most, he's known as the Code.
The Code. I know
Code.
COD. And
Code. Yes.
I remember seeing Quest at Visiones around
Yeah.
1987, 88.
Yeah.
And I think the first version of Quest had Al Foster and George Mraz, but the
Yeah.
solidified version that hung around was Ron McClure and Jabali with Billy
Right.
Hart. Right?
Great.
And that's the group I heard. And
Yeah.
I remember Liebman saying, "This song is called The Code's Secret Code," or something like that. And I'm like, what does he say? Clove Code? I didn't know
Oh
what it
no,
was.
that's it.
Richie's Code.
Yeah,
What
he's
does that nickname mean to you?
well, he just really understands about music. I mean, he's really studied the tradition of modern classical music, and
Right.
he really is able to incorporate a lot of that 20th century harmony and everything within the jazz idiom.
Okay.
He's brought that harmonic sense in with the jazz thing.
Gotcha.
And
Adam,
he's great, man. Great guy.
I am sorry that we're gonna have to wrap it up. I want to name
Okay.
check some other great people you played with that
We
I
could
don't.
we could do a part two sometime, bro.
I
I'm
want
not
to
going
do that.
anywhere.
I want to do that. I know none of us are going anywhere.
Yeah.
Two tremendous Toronto tenor players. You did something with Pat LaBarbera and Kirk McDonald.
Yeah.
You've done something with my old band director man at New England Conservatory, Miroslav man. You worked with Miroslav Vitus. I'm assuming that was in Europe. I mean, I'm sure there are other things with Stern. You've worked with both of the great Doki brothers, Chris Min Doki and Niels Land Doki, on different projects, a bunch of records. Somewhere off in the stratosphere, you worked with Hal Galper and Herb Geller. Unbelievable. And Bobby Hutcherson, Art Farmer, Dee Dee Bridgewater. And I'm sure I'm leaving some other people out. My apologies to them, but this is a very broad list. And then there are bands that you like, collective bands or bands you co-led, like the Bond Band since 07, and We Three since 04, and Swallow with Ohad Talmor on tenor since 08, and all of this. And when we do play the last music today, it's going to be something from your current or more recent Lead Belly project.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's talk about Mike Brecker and John Abercrombie before we go. Let's talk about Michael first. I mean, man, speaking as a saxophonist, it's ridiculous. It's like Art Tatum. It's the highest level, along with Coltrane and a couple other, few guys up on Mount Rushmore, the greatest level of saxophone playing. But of course, with Michael, the hours and years of practice, the incredible lines and patterns, the perfect tenor sound, the richness, the command of the entire horn from low B flat up to insane stratospheres. I don't think anyone's going to be offended if I say this. No one's ever played the tenor saxophone better than Michael Brecker.
Well, the only other people I can think of up like that would be somebody maybe like Sonny Rollins.
And that's a whole different kind of approach to the tenor.
But Michael was so devoted to the art and the craft. He put in a lot of time, man. You don't luck up on that kind of ability.
So actually, when I would hear a new Michael Brecker composition, I could almost hear some of the things that he was working on that he would put into it.
Yeah. It's a shame that we lost him, man. It's a shame because.
I know. What was he, man? He was 59 years old. Jesus.
Less. I think he was 57. It's one thing when somebody leaves after the journey has come to a beautiful conclusion.
Like Kenny Wheeler, who made it to 82.
Well, or more yet, these people like Charlie Persip made it up to 90. People that lived a full life.
Yeah.
Because Jimmy Heath, these people, they lasted a long time, man. But it's a drag when cats go down in the middle of the journey. It's just a shame. And Michael was curious about more things. He had other things in mind that he didn't get to.
Can you tell us what some of them might have been?
He had been fascinated by some elements of Bulgarian music.
Really? Huh.
And I remember talking to him about it. And I remember talking to him at a period when he said that, you know, he was sick, but he went in and he was going to do he did that last record, Pilgrimage. And I remember talking to
Pilgrimage,
him. He
which is
said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be doing something. I said, you're going to be doing some of that Bulgarian stuff? He goes, I don't think I'm going to get to that one.
yeah. And this is when Michael knew that he was ill. And my understanding, I have Pilgrimage. I lost it, but that's one of my favorite CDs. And as I remember, it was mostly Herbie Hancock and Jack, and was it Dave
Pat.
Holland and Pat Metheny? Does
I
that
think it
sound right?
was Pat, and I think it was Patitucci.
Patitucci, and also Brad Meldau was on a couple of cuts rather than Herbie, I believe. But
Yeah.
Pilgrimage, from what I read, like Michael was ill and he was struggling with the condition that he had.
Yep.
And then he had some like incredible last burst of energy to make Pilgrimage, and then his health kind of went back downhill. Does that sound
Well,
right?
I know that he wanted to get that thing together, man.
So
And
what aside from the Bulgarian music do you think Michael would have done if he had hung around longer?
who knows, man? This guy was always keeping his ears open,
Yeah,
and he was somebody who was a searcher and a seeker.
yeah.
And I have a, I had a lot of good times with him. We had a lot of fun. He was a very good person, man. Big heart, helped a lot of people out beyond music, far beyond music, and just a good soul, man. Very self-effacing.
Yeah. You know what? I ran into him maybe 5 or 6 times. We had a couple things in common. One was we had the same iconic teacher. We both studied with Joe Allard.
Okay,
So,
I
so
went
we,
to a lesson with Joe Allard one
oh
time.
my God. Well, let me here, put your finger here. What Joe used to say about Michael when I was 17, 18, and I was studying with Joe in Boston, he'd say, what did he say? Michael Brecker, he was talking about playing a very hard setup, thick reed, like a number 10 mouthpiece. He said he developed polyps in his neck, and this is, but Joe also used to say, David Lieben came to me with a plastic reed. He couldn't play high F. He'd yell at you about that.
I went to a lesson that Dave took with Joe Allard,
Okay. Well,
and that was fascinating.
I'm getting the red light, not the green light. But so Herschel, indulge us. We need to address John Abercrombie, and then we'll play our closing music. And before we do that, and I mean, we could have an entire interview just talking about Mike Brecker and some of these folks. So suffice it to say, John was one of my best friends. He was one of your best friends there in upstate New York, and we love him a lot. And we watched him kind of wither away health wise, and it was very painful. And I remember being outside the hospital in Peekskill, and I was kind of hopeful that he was going to stick around a little longer. And you said something to me like, it doesn't look good, man. This does not look good to me. Do you remember that conversation?
It was scary.
It was rough. And John, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I think he died of a combination of things in his body. It wasn't this or that. It wasn't just cancer. It wasn't just this. I just think you and I both used to say to him independently of each other, John, you take such bad care of yourself, you're going to live forever, right? Something like this.
I don't know, man.
Just cigarettes and a little taste of vodka and a lot of steaks. And but there's no person like John Abercrombie. I mean, the guitar playing aside, and he and Michael Brecker go all the way back because they were in Dreams together, and then they were in Billy Cobham's band together. We shouldn't not mention Randy Brecker, one of the greatest trumpet players and composers.
Absolutely.
So really quickly, what did you do with Randy? And then let's talk about John before we close.
Well, I got to play with Randy when he was with Eliani. We were in a quartet with Eddie Gomez. That was a lot of fun.
I bet.
And I'd known about Randy. They were on the scene. These guys were on the scene. I was like just the new kid on the block.
Yeah.
So I'd be in different situations. I remember playing at 55 Grand Street.
Yep.
With Sco and Swallow. And one week we played with Randy as a guest. Another week we played with Michael as a guest.
Incredible.
And then playing with Randy and Eliani with Gomez, that was great to play with Eddie. And Eliani, she was fantastic, and she helped me I learned so much about, the Brazilian kind of things from her. That was every situation I've been in has been an opportunity for me to learn something.
Sure.
And I'd look at all these experiences and I stop sometimes and I say, I'm so thankful that I had these opportunities
You've had
because
great opportunities, Adam, and you earned all of them, but you've been
well,
very fortunate to play with a lot of the great, great
well,
cats.
it helped me get better,
Sure.
and all I can try to do is now that I'm at this age, I have to try to help out the next whatever. We're part of a big continuum here.
Jazz is tribal. We do try to pass things on,
Absolutely.
and
And
any one of us can look back and say, these are people who looked out for me. These are people who pulled my coat, taught me this, taught me that.
man, I still call my fathers on Father's Day, whoever's left.
If James
And
Moody was here, you'd be calling him.
absolutely, I'll call up Jack. I'll call up Roy Haynes. I'll call up Billy Harp. I call up the guys that were, good to me.
Sure.
Forget how great they played. They were gracious and encouraging to me. They gave me a chance to do stuff.
Huh?
And
I,
I
I,
call them up. I tell them, I say, look, no, you know me. I'd call Jimmy Cobb, Charlie Persip, Mel Lewis, Elvin. I'd call them up on Father's Day and say, thank you, Pete LaRocca, whoever was there, my elders.
this is
I'm
incredible, Adam.
thankful.
That's beautiful. I'm
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
moved about this. I mean, I feel the same way. The thing about Mike Brecker, I'd like to say, as someone who didn't know him very well, is whenever I ran into him, one time he said to me, "So, Rob, how are you? What are you doing?" I thought, I can't believe Michael Brecker gives a shit, but I know now, of course he did. He was that
The
way.
thing is, there's a sense of humanity,
Yeah.
and you hear that when you hear these people.
And we hear it in Abercrombie really quick.
Totally.
The thing that I remember you doing most with John, I'm sure you did other things, was this great organ trio that you had. You on drums, John Abercrombie on guitar, and first Ohio's Dan Wall on guitar, and when he sort of stopped traveling a lot, Gary Versace on organ. I'm sorry, Dan Wall on organ. Gary Versace, and do you remember the gig at Iridium where actually Jared Gold was subbing for Gary? And I
Well,
remember going to that gig. You played Sherwood and you played whatever you played. And
actually, Dan was from Atlanta.
oh, okay, I didn't know that. The
He
teaching
was
gig was Long
originally
Island.
from Atlanta, and he was on the scene down there for a while.
Yeah. But that
And
organ trio was really special because it was kind of a more, I mean, in the way that Larry Young was modern and not all just about, the blues and swinging hard like a
yeah,
Jack McDuff or a Jimmy Smith. That was a very modern organ trio, right?
there was a lot more of modern harmonic sophistication. The
Right.
vocabulary. What I liked about that band was we were all lovers and enamored with the tradition without getting stuck in it.
Right.
We all loved the roots. We all loved the blues. Because that, to me, at the end of the day, if the music doesn't have the blues in it, I'm sorry.
Sure.
That's an inherent quality in all my favorite music. And Dan had that, John had it, but they were also like looking ahead. And
Right.
I loved have that trio was a lot of fun for me. And I'm grateful we did some nice projects, and I got this whole shelf behind me of stuff I'm on, and there's a handful of stuff there that I really feel good about.
Well,
That's
like,
some of
I mean,
it.
if someone held a gun to your head or put you on a desert island and said, Adam, give me your three best CDs or I'm going to shoot you, what do you think you'd hand that person?
Ooh, that'd be tough.
I
That'd be
bet.
tough. I'd maybe say one of the ones with Abercrombie, the Tactics, the live one
I don't know that one. Is that with the organ trio with Gary or with Dan?
with Dan live at Visiones.
Oh, really? Way back then. Okay.
That's a
Tact.
good one that I feel good about. Oh man, it's hard if I had to just pick three.
Did you?
I don't like listening to the stuff that I've already done. I'm
I
trying
just.
to.
Well, you know what? I read when I was a little kid some famous book. Cootie Williams never ever listened to himself on a record with Duke Ellington, and people were like, "Well, why wouldn't you want to do that?" And his friend goes, "Cootie don't like to look back."
You know, somebody says, "What's your best recording?" I say, "Hopefully the next one."
The next one. Well, so look, man, I know how much you love John Abercrombie. I know how supportive you were of him. And you are two funny motherfuckers, man. And Versace is funny also, but he's insane in an amazing way. I think he's crazier than you and John. So I want you to tell one story. And Herschel has 4 little kids. We're gonna have to let our producer go. And the music we're gonna play at the end, really quick, is your personal project as a band leader, your Lead Belly project, which is pretty interesting. Lead Belly modernized and colonized for modern day improvising musicians. It's going to be 2 guitars, need guitar with Lead Belly.
Right.
Great Nate Radley, who I get to play with sometimes. He subs in the band for Pete McCann. And this is a Kansas City based website and series.
Steve Cardenas, great guitar player. And
right.
And the thing is, when I was a little boy, my parents had in their record collection 2 Lead Belly records. And when I was a little boy, those were among the very first records that I listened to and was captivated by.
But you're still listening to that music and recasting it and playing it in your Lead Belly project, aren't you?
Well, we're just taking what that music was. I just wanted to take simple music, man, because I'm hearing too much music now that sounds like math and science.
So one quick question. Why does that band have 2 guitars and tenor, but no bass player?
Because Lead Belly played a 12-string guitar.
So he was covering the bass himself?
I wanted to try to do something that I hadn't done before without a bass player, because nobody loves bass more than me. I learned everything about time and playing from bass players, but I wanted to try to do something different, and I found 2 bad cats that played 6-string, so 2 guitars equals 12 strings.
Well, we just want to say, I think we got it out, but if people didn't hear it, Steve Cardenas, one of the great guitar players in the jazz and improvising world, played with Paul Motion and Carla Bley and all these people. He is a native son of Kansas City, and I'm sure that all of you in that town are aware of this. So these are Adam's CDs with his Lead Belly project.
There's this one.
Yeah.
And then I picked out all the music for this one and figured out what to do with it. And then for the second one, which is this, I said to the guys, you pick out the tunes you want to do.
See, now the only time I've ever heard of, we'll tie it all up with this little ribbon. The only time I ever heard of a jazz musician playing the music of Lead Belly was before you, was the one arrangement from Gil Evans Plus 10 called Ella Speed.
But there's more. Clifford Jordan did a record back on the 60s for Atlantic called These Are My Roots.
And there's Lead Belly on there, huh?
Oh, it's all playing Lead Belly stuff. But what we did was very different. And these were actual recordings. We set up in a room. We recorded completely live, no overdubs, nothing. What you see is what you get.
Well, Adam, we're going to play that music, and I'm so sorry we have to close for today because it's over 2 hours, but it sure is fun talking to you about all this.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this, Rob. Thanks for having me. Herschel, thank you for putting up with us.
Listen, Adam, we're trying to create a library here. You're the 50th or so interview that we've done since last March. Sheila Jordan, Bobby Watson, Roger Rosenberg, Robin Eubanks, Tony Cadillac, Greg Gisbert, Scott Wenholt, Mike Richmond, Cameron Brown.
Cool.
All those people have been
and
in
you
there.
know what? If I can say one thing,
sure.
Try to get the oldest cats first. See if you can get Benny Golson.
Interesting. Yeah. And Marshall Allen, who, in my opinion, is not opinion, it's a fact, is the oldest jazz musician working today. He's 96 and he's still doing his Sun Ra thing. Did you know that?
Get the oldest cats first, man, because they're going to be the first to move.
Word. Yeah, I will take that under direct advisement.
Cool.
So everybody, we want to really thank our long-suffering producer with little children climbing all over him back there in Kansas City, Herschel McWilliams.
Thank you, Herschel.
Yeah, Live Jazz KC, incredible website. You will be able to see this interview of Adams and all the other ones we've done for free on the website. Do donate if you can, and if you'd like to, keep the website going. And I just want to tell you really quick, coming up, we're going to do part 2 with trombonist Joe Bowie. And then we are basically, I'm sorry, we have a message from Herschel. He says, thanks, guys. Can't wait for you to get to KC sometime sooner than later, Adam.
Yeah,
So
I love going to Kansas City, and I can get me some of that good barbecue.
yeah, we know where to take you. There's no doubt. I'm sorry, Oklahoma, Texas is nothing like Kansas City barbecue. So really quick, here's what we got coming up. We're kind of taking a little midwinter break, but we're going to do part 2 with Joe, and then when we come back in March, yes, in March we have in order starting March 2nd every Tuesday, and then we'll post them as quickly as we can. Tom Scott, Freddie Hendricks, Gary Smullian, Dave Stryker, Frank Tate, who's in about
wonderful
78.
bass player.
So he's one of the older cats that we're getting in there. And then as we go into April and May, just really quick off the top of my head, Johnny King, Larry Schneider, Pete Levin, Scott Whitfield, Joe Lovano, Ben Porowski, Rachel Z, James Zoller, and Jason Jackson, and I'm even leaving a couple of people out.
And you know who else? You know who else you should try to grab?
Who's that?
Bill Crow.
Yes, I'll get in touch with Bill. Is he still where he was in New City or whatever?
Yes.
Okay. Well, look, there's so much more. Thank you, Herschel. Thank you, Live Jazz KC. It sounds corny if I say this, but I am Rob Scheps for Convo Improvvo. We invented this series, and it's been a deep pleasure to have this conversation with Adam Nussbaum today. Thank you,
Rob.
Adam.
Thank you. And for those of you, check out Rob. He plays his ass off.
Thank you. Coming from you, that really means something, man. That matters. Oh, and real quick,
Absolutely.
do you remember the one full gig that we did together? It was with that organist from Poughkeepsie, Mike Torsone. We played at that Siboney Cafe or whatever. And I remember saying to Mike, like, who's going to be on drums? You know, this guy you usually get or that? No, Adam's doing it. I said, great, man. Adam's doing it.
I had fun up there, too. It was a chance I had to play with the great guitar player, Eddie Deal.
Before he passed. You know what? To be continued, Adam. I'm sure these kids, it's like a zombie movie. They've already bitten chunks of flesh out of Herschel's legs because 2 of them are 4 and 2. So they're biting him and eating him, and they're not going to.
Here, this is for the kids. Listen.
But can you solo on giant steps with your hands?
If it's a real slow tempo. Oh, my intonation is terrible. But, you don't have to worry about that now. You can fix it in Pro Tools.
That's right. So that's really funny. Well, anyway, everybody, see, I told you, Adam Nussbaum, who really is half master jazz drummer, another half, I would say, wise, sagacious, becoming a jazz elder, not quite an elder yet, but elder than before. And you can't, that great line from the producers, Max, you can only sell 100% of anything. And 50% more, putting it at 150, Adam Nussbaum, Catskills comedian, old school Jewish tumbler.
I'm looking forward to getting deployed to the quarter note again. I miss it.
Okay, Herschel, we're almost done here. This is going to be 60 seconds. Tell the headquarters story, and then we're going to play Lead Belly and be done for the day. Headquarters.
I'm on a plane with Abercrombie and Gary Versace. Versace's up against in a seat, and next to him is a guy with a massive head, and he's sitting there.
That part, John didn't tell me about the massive head.
Oh, big, like 25-gallon head, and he's kind of like sitting there, and in his coat, he's kind of like making notes on a little pad. So then afterwards, I saw Gary. I said, Gary, how was it sitting next to headquarters over there? So then he started to be called headquarters, and I got the handle with a whole other story, TM, terrible man.
See, this is a whole other thing, because I thought that what happened is I thought you leaned over and whispered to John or Gary, this guy's trying to contact headquarters. Is that wrong?
We were joking. We were saying, what's he doing with those notes? And then I said, well, maybe he's just trying to contact headquarters. So it all kind of morphed together. So Gary became HQ and I was TM. And when we correspond I still go, hey, HQ. And he goes, hey, TM. So this is stuff that happens on the road, man. This little code stuff. Like Lester Young would say when the cops would show up, he'd go, here comes Bing and Bob.
Bing and Bob. He continued, man. The great Adam Nussbaum, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Listen, everybody, stay positive and test negative.
Well put. And a great sentiment. Thank you, Herschel McWilliams, our producer.
Thanks, Herschel.
In Kansas City, and his great website that's keeping jazz going during this unfortunate pandemic, Live Jazz KC. The question is always, Rob, where can I watch the interviews? The answer is on the Facebook page of Live Jazz KC or the YouTube channel of Live Jazz KC. So I'm Rob Scheps. That's Adam Nussbaum. That's plenty for today, man. Part 2 to be continued, Adam. You're going to come back, right?
Aloha.
Aloha, Musa B. Okay, everybody. Oh, and here's Lead Belly Project, real quick. Steve Cardenas and Nate Radley on guitars. Ohad Telmore on tenor saxophone. As they say in New York, Adam Nussbaum on drums and cymbals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you heard this one?